The sun was still low in the sky, painting Brooksville in warm, honeyed light. Sunday mornings in this small town had a rhythm as predictable as the turning of seasons. Lawns had been trimmed the day before, cars sat gleaming in driveways, and the faint sound of bells drifted through the cool air, calling residents to worship. Grace Baptist Church stood proudly at the corner of Maple and 3rd, a tall white building with clean, painted siding and a steeple that caught the morning sun like a beacon. Stained glass windows glowed softly from within, casting patches of color on the front steps. From inside came the gentle hum of the choir warming up, harmonies weaving together like silk threads. At the entrance, Pastor Robert stood like a pillar. His presence was both welcoming and imposing, the kind of presence that made you want to stand a little straighter when you approached. He had spent over 30 years in ministry, and in that time, he had built Grace Baptist into one of the most respected congregations in the county. His hair was now silver at the temples, his face lined in places where laughter and worry had left their marks, but his eyes were still sharp, the kind that seemed to weigh everything they looked upon. He greeted each member by name. "Good morning, Martha. How's the new grandbaby? Thomas, glad to see you back from your business trip. Helen, your smile could light up this whole sanctuary." His handshakes were firm, his words warm, and his suit was without a single wrinkle. To Robert, the church was not only a house of worship, it was a reflection of God's glory, and he believed that meant keeping it orderly, respectable, and, yes, dignified. That sometimes meant making difficult calls, ones that he convinced himself were in the congregation's best interest. It was then, amid the cheerful hum of Sunday arrivals, that he saw her. She approached slowly along the sidewalk, head slightly bowed, as though the weight of the world pressed down on her shoulders. She wore faded jeans with a tear at the knee, an oversized sweater whose cuffs had unraveled, and sneakers so worn that the sole flapped faintly with each step. Her hair, though clean, looked uneven, as if she had cut it herself in a bathroom mirror. A small, tattered purse hung from her shoulder. She stopped at the base of the church steps. Her eyes traveled up the length of the building to the shining steeple, lingering for a moment on the stained glass that caught the sun like jewels. A flicker of something, hope, maybe, crossed her face. She took a breath and began climbing the steps. Near the doors, two women in floral dresses noticed her and exchanged a glance. One leaned toward the other, whispering something that made the other's lips press into a thin line. When the woman reached the top, she offered Robert a tentative smile. "Good morning, Pastor." "Good morning," he replied, his tone polite but measured. "I was hoping, if it's all right, to join your service today," she said, her voice quiet but steady. Robert studied her for a moment longer than was comfortable. In the back of his mind, he thought of the church's image, of the donors in the front pews, of visitors who might judge the state of his congregation by the people they saw inside. "Well, ma'am," he began carefully, "our congregation, we do try to maintain a certain environment here." Her smile faltered. "I understand, but I've had a hard week, and I just thought." "Perhaps," Robert said, cutting her off gently, "you might find a church better suited to your situation. Somewhere you might feel more comfortable." The words were not cruel, but they were final. The woman's gaze dropped to the steps beneath her feet. Her cheeks flushed pink. "I see," she murmured. A couple entering the church stepped around her without making eye contact. The faint sound of the choir floated out from the sanctuary, full of joy that contrasted sharply with the heaviness settling over her. "God bless you," Robert added quickly, before turning back to greet the next family. She stood there for a heartbeat longer, as if hoping he might change his mind. When he didn't, she turned and began to descend the steps. Her walk away from the church was slow, almost reluctant. She pulled her sweater tighter around herself, though the morning air was mild. Every step seemed to echo with a memory. Moments when she had reached out for kindness only to find rejection. Her name was Clara Hayes. And no one in that building knew it, but she was not a stranger to faith, nor was she a stranger to hardship. Years ago, Clara had been the one in need, sleeping in her car for months, showering at public facilities, living off donated meals. She had once stood in line at a soup kitchen, feeling the burn of shame even as hunger gnawed at her. In those years, she had learned that kindness could be found in unexpected places, and that judgment could, too. Clara walked several blocks until she reached a small diner with a chipped neon sign that read, "Sunnyside Cafe." Inside, the smell of frying bacon and fresh coffee filled the air. She chose a. Please subscribe to this channel. Booth by the window, ordered a black coffee, and sat in silence, watching families in crisp clothes pass by on their way to other churches. Her phone buzzed. She fished it from her purse and answered. Hello. A bright voice came through the line. Clara. It's Daniel. Everything's set for tomorrow morning. The studio car will be there at 8 sharp. The producers can't wait to have you. Clara's lips curved into a faint smile. Thank you, Daniel. I'll be ready. After the call, she stared out the window again. Tomorrow would be different. Tomorrow, she would not be invisible. The next morning, sunlight streamed into Pastor Robert's kitchen. Margaret flipped pancakes at the stove while Robert sipped his coffee and browsed headlines on his tablet. The television on the counter played the morning news. And now, a special guest, the anchor announced. Joining us live is Clara Hayes, founder of New Beginnings, a non-profit dedicated to helping the homeless rebuild their lives. Robert's eyes shot up. His coffee cup hovered halfway to his lips. There she was, the same woman he had turned away less than 24 hours ago. But now she wore a tailored dress, her hair neatly styled, her eyes bright. The anchor leaned forward. Clara, we've heard that you sometimes disguise yourself as someone in need to see firsthand how the homeless are treated. Why do you do that? Clara's voice was steady. Because I want to see the truth. Yesterday, I visited a church. I won't name it, but I was turned away at the door. I can handle it. I know who I am. But I thought about all the people who might come seeking hope and instead find rejection. That's why I do what I do. Because change begins with awareness. Margaret's spatula paused mid-air. Robert, she said softly, was that? Robert didn't answer. His gaze stayed fixed on the screen as the interview continued. Clara spoke of lives transformed, of people who had gone from park benches to steady jobs, from hopelessness to dignity. She ended by announcing a $1 million pledge to expand shelters statewide. The room was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator. By the end of the day, social media was buzzing. Clips of Clara's interview spread quickly. People began speculating about which church had turned her away. Robert's phone buzzed with messages from other pastors, some expressing sympathy, others reminding him that the eyes of the community were watching. Sunday came again, and the sanctuary was quieter than usual. Robert stood at the pulpit, feeling the weight of his own words before he spoke them. Last week, he began slowly, a woman came to our door seeking fellowship. I turned her away. I did it out of pride and judgment. And I was wrong. From the back, a voice replied softly, I forgive you, Pastor. Heads turned. Clara was there, standing calmly, dressed simply but neatly. She walked to the front, meeting Robert's gaze. I'd like to make a donation to your church, she said, on one condition, that no one is ever turned away again. Robert's voice caught. You have my word. They shook hands. The choir began to sing, and for the first time in years, Robert felt the word grace in his bones.